All right, good morning. Thank you for coming here today, taking time out to come to listen to what needs to be said with respect to the Queen City, the rise in political violence, rhetoric, and empty political theater that does nothing to solve the problems that we face today, not just in Charlotte and in North Carolina, but across this country. I'm State Representative Laura Budd, and beside me is the candidate for District 6 City Council, Kimberly Owens. And today, what we want to point out to you is that over the last several weeks, our country has seen violence ricochet around the nation. From here in the Queen City with the absolutely horrific murder of Irina Zaritska, to the senseless and yet sadly familiar school shooting in Denver, Colorado, to a third shooting on a college campus in Utah with Charlie Kirk. All three of these incidents made national news, but we also know how many more took place that never even made a headline outside of their locality. And yet, what have we heard from the White House? Nothing. Nothing that unites this country, and especially not a plan that addresses the very issues that gave rise to the problems that we are all confronting today. A lack of real resources for our courts and judiciary, a lack of real resources and investment for law enforcement, and a state healthcare infrastructure that is systematically underfunded when it comes to addressing mental illness. All we have heard is blame shifting, threats, and what I call cheap political shots. It is blame in the form of antagonistic statements that are designed to blame Democrats by calling us woke, leftist, progressive, soft on crime, and coddling criminals, none of which is true. President Trump has not answered the call for something that unifies us, and he has not answered the call for a plan to address the problems that confront not just Charlotte, but other cities across the nation and our rural areas. This, in conjunction with the North Carolina's crime policy, consists of nothing more than going on TV and social media to exploit what has transpired to deflect attention from what is a lack of a plan and a refusal to put the money where their mouth is. In North Carolina, the Republicans have held power since 2011, and that means that they control the flow of legislation as well as the budget. When they took control, they promised a lot of things, but what we haven't seen is anything other than the systematic and intentional underfunding of our public safety system, our legal system, and trashing our courts and our local officials and local law enforcement. While they're doing this, they're pouring billions into school vouchers, and they want to pass a law that gives 18-year-olds the right to carry a firearm without a permit. The budget for the courts in North Carolina is about 2%. It's 2% of about $30 billion. We can all do the math. At the very least, Trump should try to measure up. He should try to measure up to President Clinton, who in 1994 proposed a plan to put 100,000 more local law enforcement officers on the streets to combat crime and address problems, and create programs like community initiatives in the communities so they can address the issues on the ground, getting to know their residents. That crime bill actually reduced crime. What we should do is look to bring that successful plan from 1994 forward to 2005 to meet the needs we confront today. How about another 100,000 new police officers locally, local officers on the streets in our communities? But let's also partner that with what we now know, which is mental health is something we must address. How about another 100,000 co-responders, criminal assistance, and crime being addressed not with threats of punishment in prison, but what we call crisis assistance co-responders to accompany local law enforcement. And let's be clear, when I talk about this and I say, where is Washington on this? I want to bring it back home. Where are the local North Carolina Republican leaders? They're in Raleigh having press conferences, and their latest posture in crime is no different. Time and time again, they have offered nothing but empty gestures and political theater, and this is no different. While real investments in law enforcement and public safety in the courts, as I've said, are coming, not from Republicans, but I will say coming from the Democrats. The pattern of lip service has continued with threats that Charlotte is out of control, that we've lost our way, and that we need them to come and fix it. We do not. What we need to know is that the people who keep our community safe are right here in Charlotte. They are our local officials, our local law enforcement, our local judges, and our local DAs, and our local mental health advocacy groups. All of them are working tirelessly around the clock. They're not soft on crime. They're not coddling criminals. They may be Democrats, and they are Democrats who give a damn. We understand there is a need for strong courts. There is a need to do the heavy lift, which is to fully fund not just our courts, but our law enforcement. To look at mental illness. What is the source of it? How do we address it at the source so we can create a solution to address it? Democrats have filed bills over the last decade and change. Oftentimes those bills, no matter how good the ideas are, because they come with a D behind them, they are relegated to the dust files, what we call File 13. They're not heard in committee. They go to rules and die. If they are heard in committee, they're never put on the floor to get passed. They just die. In the meantime, the fix for Charlotte, as the GOP leadership in Raleigh has said, is going to be to reinstate the death penalty. It's going to be to examine the city of Charlotte's books. It's going to be to get rid of what they call cashless bail. Well, let's be clear. DeCarlos Brown committed a crime, and a crime that should be punished. But he also, as we now know, suffers from severe mental illness. Had he received and been required to post a bond, the most he could have served, if he'd been unable to post, is 120 days. And he would have been back out on the streets. So this idea of getting rid of cashless bail to fix a problem, it's lip service. It's not really a solution. The difference here, excuse me, sir. Oh, you've got to go stand behind him, sir. Go on. After reviewing the court records of DeCarlos Brown and directly speaking with our Mecklenburg County and Charlotte City local leaders and elected officials, as well as those in law enforcement and the judiciary and lawyers, what I have ascertained is not just that the GOP has no plan here, but there are some things that we can do. And this is what I will tell you. The plan is moving forward, at least with respect to Representative Budd. Number one, expand judicial discretion for the judges and the magistrates that serve across our state to initiate commitment proceedings at any level of the judicial process. Stop requiring that it be a third party to file this paperwork. This single change alone would have enabled the magistrate who had DeCarlos Brown in front of her on that fateful day in January this year to, on her own, initiate commitment proceedings when confronted with the obvious mental illness that DeCarlos Brown displayed in front of her. Second, I call for the North Carolina GOP to partner with the Democrats in the House and the Senate. Let's fund no less than 5,000 more local police officers across the state to deploy across our cities and our counties to help protect and serve and create a sense of public safety, restoring it where it may have been damaged or lost. But along with that, 5,000 crisis assistance mental health co-responders with them. This will help to develop not just community policing programs, but to help bolster our mental health advocacy groups so that people who need the help can get the help. We cannot imprison our way out of mental illness. Third, pass legislation that's been proposed before that freezes the statute of limitations for those people charged with violent crimes or showing an escalation in criminal offenses such as DeCarlos Brown, for those who are incompetent to stand trial. Place them in the care of our state hospitals so they can receive the mental health treatment they need. And if they are ever determined to be competent again, they can stand trial. If not, they're in a safe place and cared for, and our streets remain safe from those who may be placing our residents at risk. Fourth, improve security in all of our schools by equipping our school resource officers with limited confidential access on an as-needed basis so they can perform a threat assessment that is accurate with regards to any student who begins to show signs of trouble. Right now their hands are tied and they have limited information. By giving them this access on a limited need-to-know basis, they can properly and adequately protect our schools, administrators, and staff. To execute this plan is going to require time and financial investment in the courts, public safety infrastructure, including our transit system. We need to upgrade and place officers on that transit system, have people pay for tickets. That alone may be a deterrent for some. This is going to require, as I said, not just strengthening our law enforcement, but workforce, recruitment, educating others, and community programs that bring others into the fold and make them feel like they have a seat at the table and a voice worthy of being heard. I call now to the Mecklenburg County state and local leaders from City Council to our state representatives who have repeatedly told the Republicans in the General Assembly over the years what we need in order to keep us safe, especially here in the Queen City. But let's be clear, threats are not the answer. They never were. There is no place in society for rageful rhetoric. There is no place in society for violence. There is no place in our society for threats of violence against politicians or anyone else. It is abhorrent to me that we have had Republicans from the national to the local level do nothing but say that they think that threats are the answer. That is not leadership. It is a poor excuse for what they define as leadership. I say this as we all prepare in the state legislature to return to Raleigh on September 22nd. I say come with your best ideas and come with an open mind and an open heart. Allow all to sit at the table and have a voice. Ignore whether or not there's a D or an R behind the name. Ignore that, because the best ideas are those that are debated across the aisle with different perspectives, different educations, and different life experiences. We need all voices to get the best ideas, to get those solutions enacted that will actually strive to create a community of safety and progressiveness. And I know that North Carolina is capable of this. We've done it before, and we can do it again. That is my ask when we return to Raleigh on September 22nd. Come prepared to work, but work with everyone, not just those that you feel politically aligned with. In closing, I ask all North Carolinians to commit to a posture of nonviolence and to dispense with the empty rage rhetoric and social media platform tweets, chats, and comments that do nothing to move us forward as a society in the United States of America. That is critical. We cannot be appalled by the violence on one side, but then when we get behind the keyboard, stoke those fires, because what happens is there are people who will take advantage of that and believe you at your words behind the keyboard. So stand up, use your voices for nonviolence. Use your voices to make a change for the positive and the greater good. Thank you.
So I'm Kimberly Owens. I'm delighted to be here today to share in this space with Representative Budd. I came because I thought it was important that she have support. I think in this time, this can be some lonely work to come out and speak hard truths, and she's done just that today. This is a complex issue. As an attorney, I've practiced law here for 30 years in Charlotte. I appreciate that there are myriad complexities that feed into an overall picture of public safety. There is no easy solution to this, but a number of the things you've heard here today are starts. And the biggest start of all is a conversation, a bipartisan conversation around what it means to be a healthy society, with healthy society goals of embracing all of us and not demonizing the other. I just ask you to open your hearts and your curiosity in this time, and that we reject political violence. Thank you.
Did anyone have any questions?
Representative Budd, when you guys go back here later this month, we've talked a lot about bipartisan solutions. The things that you outlined, do you think Republicans would meet you there on
Yes.
those issues?
Yes, I do. I think that there is a lot more in common than that which divides us, and I know that we've had that said before in the past, but I can say that from having worked with a number of my Republican colleagues across the aisle through the Judiciary Committee. And so what I find disheartening is when I see leadership in the North Carolina GOP in their press conference earlier this week, and it's rhetoric. It must be the Democrats. They've lost control in Charlotte. it is woke policies and progressive policies. That's not it at all, and it does not move us forward towards the finish line. What moves us forward is really listening to the different ideas and then funding those ideas. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, which is why my ask is that everybody be brought to the table, because the issues that they face in rural communities, which is where a number of our Republican legislators hail from, are very different than those that confront us in urban and suburban communities. And so you cannot have a one-size-fits-all solution, but you also can't assume that you know everything about what the other person or the other communities are going through or what they think needs to be done to solve their problems.
Have you had any chance to speak with any of the members from across the aisle about potentially putting any of these ideas in a bipartisan bill?
Several of them I have spoken with, not about these specific issues. As you know, it has moved very, very quickly with respect to who's going to do what and why. But what we have heard is that their proposal is to come back on September 22nd with a package, but there have been no details with respect to that package other than the reinstatement of the death penalty or unfreezing it, looking at the city council's books, and I believe they're also discussing increasing magistrate pay, which the magistrates have been campaigning on for years. In fact, the lead magistrate on the issue of raising pay is out of Mecklenburg County, and he does in fact know what he's talking about. The Republicans have also alluded to increasing the credentialing requirements for magistrates, which is something that I have long thought was necessary to be looked at. But I also know that when we're going to increase the requirements to serve as a magistrate, with that will come pay increases as well. So you must have the conversation about both. What makes the most sense, but also, are we willing to pay for it? You can have the best ideas in the world, but if you're unwilling to put your money where your mouth is, what are they worth?
If any of your Republican colleagues accept some of your ideas and attach it to a bipartisan bill, if they included reinstating the death penalty to that bill, would that be a non-starter for you and your other colleagues?
I cannot speak with respect to my other colleagues. I can only speak with respect to myself with the death penalty. I am not an advocate of the death penalty. Not because I don't believe that heinous crimes should not be punished. I absolutely unequivocally do. But I am also well aware of the fact that we are humans, and a jury of your peers, they make mistakes. And the death penalty is permanent. And if we make a mistake and we put someone to death who was in fact innocent, we can never take that back. So I am an advocate of life in prison, not the death penalty for those reasons. But it's not soft on crime. It's a reality that humans make mistakes, and that is one that's irreversible.